Being a chartered manager means that you are a specialist in that area, and it means you've got all the skills to do the job to the best of its ability.
You are seen as a leader, a true leader who has credentials behind the great work you've already been doing.
It's enhanced my understanding, it's enhanced my skill set, it's improved my mindset.
It makes all the difference.
This session is recorded and will be available on the CMI website and YouTube channel. Join the conversation by using the live chat box for your questions and comments. We'll answer as many as we can during the Q&A.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Wise Women Rising, Embracing Menopause and Leadership digital event. My name is Mary, and I'm an event delivery coordinator at CMI. Don't forget to join the conversation by using the live chat box, and feel free to ask any questions you have for the speakers, and we'll answer as many as possible during the Q&A. I will now hand over to Caroline Whitehead, the chair of the CMI West Midlands and Northwest Regional Board, to begin today's event.
Good afternoon, everyone. Can you put where you're from in the comments when you're actually putting a comment? We like to see where everybody is based, so that'd be fantastic. Official good afternoon and welcome to the Wise Women Rising, Embracing Menopause in Leadership. Menopause affects half the population, yet it's still one of the least talked about topics at work. And it often hits women as they are stepping into the most influential leadership years. Today isn't just about the challenges, it's about changing the narrative. Because for many, the stage brings sharper clarity, stronger boundaries, and more authentic leadership. So we're here to explore how we better support women at work and how we unlock the leadership strength that can come with the transition. Because when we get it right, we don't just support women, we build stronger, more inclusive organisations. Let me introduce my guests. I have Simone Roche, MBE. She is social impact entrepreneur and founder of We Are Power. And we also have Reverend Fiona Taylor. She's also Chief Executive Officer of Restores Coaching and Collectives. Welcome to the both of you.
Well, hello, Caroline. Thank you for having us.
Hi, Carol.
On this bizarre March day with hailstone. Now, listen, I want you to introduce yourself. I don't want to do it because I'm lazy. So I want you to introduce yourself. Simone, you start.
Well, it'd be like me introducing you, Caroline. Where do you start? So many layers. So many layers. Hello, everyone. Great to be here. This beautiful tropical March Wednesday, kind of. It's wonderful to be part of this conversation, this really, really important conversation. I'm Simone. I'm the founder of We Are Power with my own sign, Northern Power Women Awards and the Power Collective. Over this past decade, we have built a community of over 120,000 individuals, role models, organisations, working with leaders, future talent in and across the UK. And we are 100% completely focused on that visibility, being seen, inclusion, and making people seen, are heard, and are able to thrive in the workplace. And we recently announced that through the 11 years that we've been in existence, and our 10th awards, which was literally 2 weeks ago, of which Caroline won an award, by the way. Congratulations, Caroline. We announced at that award ceremony that we had £12.3 million that we've created in social value over the last 11 years. And that was looking at all the impact and all the activity that we've been doing over this last decade and a bit. And that for me has always been about the importance of that connection, the convening, the opportunities and the support that we've all got the ability to give again. And what happens when people are given the chance not just to show up fully, but to really thrive. Before all of that, I started my career way back in the late 80s in the Royal Navy. And at that time, this is a world where you signed on for 9 years. You weren't allowed to be pregnant. You weren't allowed to get married. And so there was absolutely no menopause policy back in the day. But as I'll update later, things have changed. And so, yeah, it was the system was very clear. You fitted the workplace or it left you. Or you left it. So now, as I say, things have significantly changed, and that's a good thing, but also shows how long it takes. And what we've been talking about. My mother put this across my window the other day. There's and it's the first issue of Gen M. So it's great that there's a recognised publication that is actually talking and educating and around this. But it does take you shows you how long it takes for workplaces to evolve. For me, menopause sits really in that sort of same space. I didn't really know what was happening at the time when it came. I just thought it was the stress of running a small business. And it wasn't until one of my colleagues or peers pointed out to me, Simone, this isn't stress, this is perimenopause. And so we need those conversations to take place, and we need that awareness to happen. And the challenge you said is at a point in people's careers where they're often the most experienced, they're most capable, they're most valuable, leading the big teams, making the decisions, shaping organization. And yet this is still one of the least talked about experiences in the workplace. So I am really thrilled to be part of this conversation today, and really open to all of the conversations and the chats and the questions that you may have, whether you're watching now or playing catch up and can catch up with us later. So brilliant to be here. Excited to be part of this next hour. It's not just a health conversation, it's a leadership conversation, it's a workplace conversation, and it's absolutely about a retention conversation, which is really critical now as you see stats seem to be going backwards at times. So thank you so much, Caroline, and I'm looking forward to chatting with the wonderful Fiona as well.
Okay, over to you, Fiona.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Caroline, for the invitation. And thank you, Simone. That was wonderful, wonderful. So how do I follow that? I just follow that by being who I am. I'm Fiona Taylor, and I have that awkward title of Reverend, which normally isn't viewed very positively. But here you go. Here I am with my pink jacket. This is me. So I work with lots of women who, at various ages, who look at aging with dread. And I'm excited to be a part of this conversation because of the breadth of experience that I have of working with women going through different stages in their life. I'm a post-menopausal woman and happy to contribute to the conversation because I've been there in the workplace, getting very, very hot. I know what it's like to feel the sweat running down my back and my clothes sticking to me and thinking, do I just sit here and carry on with my presentation, or do I say, excuse me, I need to bow out and freshen up? I've been there and I know what it's like to sit in the room with other women and I can see in their face this little bit of distress starting to appear. And I've been in that workplace where women are trivialized for what they're experiencing, even though their symptoms can be very, very extreme. So that's a little bit about some of the things that I've been through personally, and seeing how women are just using humor to deflect from how they're feeling when what they're going through sometimes is, if it was a male body going through what they were going through, they would be highlighting a medical emergency. So with the potency of the experiences that I've had, just let me mention where I come from in terms of experience. So I speak from 3 different contexts, if you like. That's where the majority of my working life has been. I was an assistant head teacher in a secondary school here in Greater Manchester, and I did that for over 15 years. And that experience of working in a leadership role with a few men around the table was where I saw many examples of how women are trivialized when they are bringing their A game and they are also suffering through the effects of perimenopause and going through full-blown menopause with an expectation that they still perform, and they often do push through and use various strategies that we're going to talk about later today to get through the day-to-day, to still perform, to still show up, and to do a great job in the education sector. As a business owner as well, the women that I work with and I support at various stages, again in their lives, often need something that gives them a bit of a boost, a bit more confidence, to understand that they're not alone, and where they're not getting support, that they need to challenge those leaders who are not supporting them, and organizations to challenge them to put into place elements that need to be there so that women can continue to thrive in the workplace. We don't want women to disappear. We want them to continue to bring the wisdom and everything that they have to the workplace. A little stat for you that I found very, very interesting, because although we live in a secular country, this country of Great Britain has about 46% of people stating that they have some kind of religious affiliation. And although we're often sidelined, most people in that 46% are bringing their faith to work with them. They might not talk about it, but it's shaped who they are. It's shaped their values. It's shaped things about how they lead. They have this cultural tradition sometimes, or sometimes even if they don't want to talk about their faith, there is another section of our society who would say that they are spiritual, or their connection with faith and tradition comes into the workplace as well, even if they're not regularly practicing their faith. So the faith question, though not often brought to the table, is an important one, because these women that I work with, 70 to 80% of the work that's being done in a local community is being done by these women. These women are showing up at work, and they're showing up in the community as well, in outward facing roles, doing children's work, various support roles. They're bringing their expertise from the workplace by volunteering in the local community. They're involved in outreach, they're looking after children, they're supporting other women, and they're adding to the gaps that there are in the social fabric of our society in this country. They're bringing their influence, even though often in the communities where I am now working in churches, often they're not at the leadership level in an organization. They're not necessarily there with the decision makers, but they are having an impact because they are on the ground and they're doing the work. So my role here in the conversation is to highlight the fact that women of faith are also women in the workplace. They're bringing their values to the workplace as well. It's influencing their style of leadership, the decisions that they make, and their attitudes towards leadership, towards care, health, and well-being. The word that I like to emphasize in terms of how we lead as women, it's not particularly fashionable, and I think it's strength. It is a real key strength, and that is the word kindness. I think that being kind to yourself and being kind to others is severely disregarded, if you like, in the workplace, thought of as being a weakness. And kindness to me is a strength under control. It's really important. And I'd like to see more of that shaping the decisions that we make. Yes, legislation needs to be there, but also that we're kind to each other, looking out for each other, because we're not just we're not just the work and output. We're not just a product. We are a body. We're a human body that comes into the workplace, and we need to be kind to that body so that we can bring our best to the table. So that's me.
Right. Oh my goodness. I don't think you can't see the chat that's coming through and the comments. Some great comments. I wanted to pick up, I mean, I've got my questions here, but I wanted to pick up Iona McLean, who has just said something that's quite interesting. Because of course, some women who don't know they're going through the menopause or haven't just quite started yet, they might be part of what I call the betwixt and between. They are looking after teenagers, hormonal all over the place, but also as well looking after aging parents, and they're betwixt and between as well as their leadership role. Now, Iona she's just said on her comment that her mother passed away suddenly, and that bereavement, she did not know if it was bereavement, stress, or the menopause, or it could be all sorts, all of them in the melting pot. There's all of that emotion as well to sort of take into consideration. Let me crack into these questions, because also there are preset questions from the audience as well. So menopause is still rarely talked about, at work. Why do you think that is? And what impact have you seen that silence have on women in leadership? Simone?
Do you know what? I think the main reason that it's still not talked about enough, it's definitely been talked about more. So let's have some positive high-fiving in there, but it's not enough. Because I think it sits, you talk about betwixt. I'm going to take your betwixt phrase there, Caroline. It sits betwixt personal and professional, doesn't it? It sits in the middle. And people think it's as something that it's, you go away and manage it privately. When you're suddenly hot as hell, and you can't just do that, you know. And I think that's what you see a lot of amazing women exiting the workplace, because they're not able to communicate that because of this impact of silence. And that's one of the impacts. So even though, you know, and it does really impact on how we show up at work, and we're very comfortable talking about performance and targets and delivery and outcomes, but we are far less comfortable, aren't we, about talking about what impacts performance. And menopause sits right in that gap. And I think even now, it seems crazy, 2026, there's that level of stigma. Is it about aging? Is it about women's health? Is it about, you know, not wanting to be seen differently? So people will keep it inside because they don't want it to go against them. But the impact of that not being verbalized or talked about is, that's where the silence comes in. And that silence, that's where the damage on confidence. And then people start to question themselves. Fiona, I'm really sorry to hear about your bereavement. It's awful, because you're then questioning, is this why? Is it menopause? Is it this? Is it stress? All these things, because you don't know, because there's no one set manual and there's no one set guide. And depending on who you are and how you're made is where those symptoms will start. Is it, you know, there's over 59 plus symptoms that are around menopause. So you don't know, but unless we're talking about them, the more we keep it silent, the more that it's damaging, not just you as humans and your fellow colleagues and fellow community, it's actually impacting on the workplace. And we strive, don't we, for equality and fairness. We're never going to get that if we're not talking about that. And we have enough to question ourselves about at times. So we literally don't want to have this against us. And this is, you know, we want to be able to talk about it, because this isn't about you not being capable because of this or because something has shifted. Sometimes it's just not having that space to talk about it. So, and this can, as we see, we can see people exiting the workplace, stepping back, losing that confidence, leaving. So for me, this issue is not a menopause problem. It's the silence, 100% that sits around it. Silence, I think, is our biggest barrier, because once people talk about it, they can manage it and they can be supported properly. But but it's then the knowing, is this menopause or is this not? I know when I first came out of realizing that this was menopause and talking about it within my tiny micro team in the office, and you know, they're young'uns, you know, young amazing women, and by talking about it, they were like, oh my god, this is really useful to know, because it's easy to keep it inside, because you're like, oh, it's about that, don't really want to talk about it. But because we started talking about it, because we started creating a space to talk about it through the We Are Power Northern Power Women community, it just became, oh, actually, that's really good, because I know how I can support my auntie, my sister, my mum, my wife, whatever. So I think one of the best things we can do, the impact that silence brings, we have to counteract that silence. And the way that we counteract it is just being quite simply talking about it, but doing it with intent. And we need our leaders and role models to step up and talk about it as well, in a normal manner of fact way, not in a you have to get the permission to do it. So that, for me, we need to make it part of that everyday conversation.
Yeah, definitely. Fiona, for you briefly, the with the menopause being rarely talked about and the silence, I'm guessing from a faith perspective as well, that's an added layer of
It is. There is the added layer, but I'm not one of those people who complies with all that keeping quiet stuff.
I know, that's why I've asked you here.
I always have been a bit of a rebel. So even though there are cultural messages, I think, within churches and in society, I am very vocal about the fact that I'm a mother, I'm a grandmother. I look after my parents. I'm in that generation, the sandwich generation. It's like a triple sandwich. It's not the traditional just 2 slices of bread. I'm there for my children, my grandchildren, and my parents.
You're a meal deal.
I am a meal deal. Dead right. I am. Absolutely. Maybe even a Greg's meal deal, because they've got fried chicken in there. If you're not
don't advertise for them.
You might not understand, but there's a particular meal deal at Greg's. It's top notch. Anyway, getting back to the messages that we received, Simone, absolutely 100% agree with everything that you said. But we as women have this this difficult situation to be in, that men don't have to deal with this in quite the same way. We get this message bombarded on our TV screens about we need to be thinking about not aging, anti-aging treatments and blah, blah, blah. That's what we're told to do. We're supposed to hide the fact that we're getting older, not celebrate our age, not celebrate what we bring to the table as we get older. And in the faith community and out there where I am, quite often women are sidelined as they get older and men are celebrated as they get older. And that is a cultural thing that happens in the West that is not part of day-to-day life in other cultures. And so part of my role is this messaging that needs to be emphasized. And I do get out there and say the things that are unsayable. I take out the stories that are normally presented with just the male perspective, because men are in charge of most of our churches and most of our organizations that are faith-based. And because they make the big decisions, they communicate many messages with their perspective, not allowing women to speak about the same issues from their own perspective. And so this fear of not embracing who we are has become a problem. And I'm part of shaking those things up. And so I do, when I stand up to speak, if I'm speaking in the church or in any other organisation where I'm invited to speak, I will touch on those difficult conversations, because they're there. There are women in the Bible who had gone past the age of childbearing, and that's how we say it. But these are postmenopausal women. That's who they are. There are women who are engaging in leadership roles at various ages. They are there in the story of the life of the church. They're not celebrated. My role is to highlight them, celebrate them, and to make them a central part of our message, because we are over 50% of the population within faith communities. Most of the time, there are more women in those communities than there are men.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. There are some great things coming through. One or two have said it's quite repeated that there are some industries that are better than others. There are very male-dominated sectors that friends are getting support from other friends outside that sector to cope. And, you know, this is where I think, and this is me pitching, using my hat, I'm deputy chair of CMI Women, as well as chair of West Midlands and North West Board. And this is where I think a piece of work needs to start, looking at the menopause and menopause in leadership. They can borrow my title if they want for the piece of work, Wise Women Rising, because at the moment there's a piece of work about the leadership pipeline and about young women. So I think, where's that pipeline going? How can we continue that pipeline? What happens afterwards? And also for those young women to see there is a place they can go. You know, that you can't be what you can't see. You know, what we don't want.
Isn't it, Caroline?
It's role modeling. We do not want the, and I'm going to use that word because it's not a negative word, the migration of women out of leadership roles. We definitely need them. So I'm going to sort of like traipse right into your personal or observed experience. From your experience, how can menopause show up in leadership? And what shifts, if any, have you seen in confidence, decision-making, or leadership style. Because the thing is that we have these issues with the menopause and how it makes us feel, etc. But I want to look at the positives as well. I stood up last year. I was keynote at the Institute of Government and Public Policy conference. And before I started, I said, you see these notes? These are not notes for me to read. These are notes for me to fan myself as I'm giving the keynote, because I am currently getting hotter and hotter. So now we've got that out the way, let's talk about what we need to talk about. So I laid it there. And I also laid out the fact that I might not remember some facts, but when we're networking, come and ask me, because I bet you I'll remember them then. So I kind of like wove in a bit of humor as well, because that's how I personally cope with it all. But I also let them know that I am, excuse my French, badass. So I'll come back to it and I'll get that question answered. So from your personal observation, what are the positives of the shifts? Shall I read that question again?
I would definitely say that we have to go against the grain of menopause being a season of loss, because it definitely has, for me, been, although difficult at the time, coming out of the other end, the other side of it. And I would say most of that journey, I felt as if I was doing it on my own, because there were so few people to talk to, and definitely within the workplace, it wasn't a place where I felt that I was supported. I felt as if I was feeling bad, I need to go and hide until I feel better and then come back. So I was dipping in and out at a time when I was at the peak of my career. But now I would say, as an older woman in the workplace, I'm at the best place that I have ever been in terms of my knowledge, wisdom, competence, experience, and confidence as well, really.
Yeah.
I think Michelle Obama has a fantastic quote where she says that when we find ourselves as women in positions of power, we need to make sure that we don't become the female version of what was already broken. And I think quite often as women, there's pressure on us just to lead like people have led before, because maybe they were seen to be successful. And I do think that embracing your power as a woman and everything that you bring to the table with those experiences of resilience and learning, sometimes we become victims of our own success because we're so resilient and we're so resourceful that we've tried to get the help that we need, and we've come through these things. And sometimes we've done ourselves damage where we've not asked for help. I do think that's an important thing to highlight as well, that we need to push through. We do need to celebrate the wisdom that we bring to the table, and we just need to get on with being the people that we are. It's something always, I think, to celebrate. The body that we've been given, the God-given shape that we have, is something that is in my language in the faith community, but I think everybody should recognize your body is something sacred. It is really, really precious thing. And a woman's body and what it goes through and what it does and how it adapts to situations and different times in life is something to be celebrated. And I'm seeing more of that now. I'm seeing more of that because women have put their foot through the door, kicked some doors down, and made those conversations happen. So I'm not the humorous person that Carol Ann is. I don't have that edge to me in the same way, but I bring who I am the way that I can, and that in itself has opened doors. So I do think it's about recognizing who you are, being that person, and just keep pushing, keep asking questions, be there to support other women as well. Recognize in the workplace if there's somebody else who's struggling, and be kind, support that person as well. That's really important.
Definitely.
And
Your personal observation, Simone, you know, about the shift and about the confidence and the leadership.
And I think I love your the Michelle Obama quote, Fiona. And I think, you said, "Oh, I'm not Fiona." Well, sorry, I'm not Carol Ann. Well, that's the whole thing, isn't it? You be you. And I'm just looking at some of the chats, the comments in the chat as well. I think we all, whether we're in leadership or we're leaders or we're managers, we have to go first, right? If we can talk about it and normalize it and make it matter of fact, it gives then everyone else the permission to do the same. So we've got to keep making it part of the everyday. And I've just seen I saw a comment there that someone who said their 16-year-old son saw the HRT gel in the bathroom, so he sees the momentum to inform him. So we've all got to be everyday educators, make it part of that, because if that is just pass it on. We keep passing it on, and it's nobody's menopause adventure, shall I say, is the same. Everyone's is different. Sometimes like sleep is a big thing, and hot flushes is a big thing, and lack of confidence, libido, all those things, it can be different. It's a different recipe for everybody. And equally, but what we've got to do is talk about it as we go. And I just thought, Iona, who we just talked about, menopause has helped me tell it like it is. I simply don't care what people think. It's very liberating. Full throat chakra on display and loving it. And I think, be more Iona, and I think
definitely.
But then I also saw someone's comment there. Sorry, forgive me for multitasking here on my two screens, Carol Ann. But it's trying to pick up.
You're showing off. That's what you're doing.
I am multitasking, but it's. But I think the richness of the chat is testament to the fact that nobody has the same sort of experience. So I think and someone sadly said in some organizations, women-led organizations, the support is not there to help you deal with female issues like menopause. Well, thank goodness, right? There are other individuals and humans that you can, sometimes it is just literally good to talk. So we have to equip managers. We have to, draw on, menopause. It's not lost on us, is it, that it's called menopause? But our male advocates are one of the most powerful things that we can sort of engage, and calling on all our male advocates to be curious and ask questions. We'll talk about it. Use the platform, we'll talk about it, and then you can pass it on. And again, this forms back to the previous question about extincting the silence, but keep it human. Keep it human. It doesn't have to be perfect language about what you're saying or what you're articulating. It's about creating those safe spaces and environment where someone can say, this is what's going on for me, without it feeling like a big deal. But feel like it's okay not to be okay, or it's okay to say this out loud. And I think that's what we have. I think that's how it's shown up for me. Is I had assumed that I thought, oh well, there you go. My mum didn't really experience it, and my Northern Power Nana, never experienced it. And it wasn't until I was well in, my mum was like, oh yeah, I had this, and this, and I'm like, why didn't you tell me? Just because you think, oh gosh, have I got early onset dementia? Is it this? So you think the more that we can normalize, it takes the fear away. When you're busy, you then don't afford yourself to go to the doctor for something through lack of sleep or through this or that. But just by talking it makes us feel like it's okay. And then we can embrace it, like Fiona says, embrace it, not seeing it like a curse. I'm not going to lie, it's not always amazing, but deal with it, but pass it on. I think that is the biggest responsibility we have. You talked about role models, Carol Ann, and that's why that visibility matters. And the more people it's being talked about, not just on an awareness day, not just on this time or this time, every day, then that's the more that they'll realize that, it's not just them or the young 16-year-old lad who hopefully has gone on and passed that on. You never know, the info that's passed on, that might help him with someone in his family that's experiencing the symptoms as well. So education is king, right? And queen. Sorry.
No, it's queen. I say data is queen and education is queen. So here's the thing. I saw that as well. I'm reading them through because we're keeping all of this. And someone's asked about how can we get involved with the research. I'm dropping breadcrumbs, people. I'm dropping breadcrumbs of the Wise Women Rising, Embracing Menopause in Leadership Research. I'd like that to happen. So as soon as it does, that will be great to actually get you guys involved, get you back on. Let's see what we can do, focus group, and just get that information, because somebody else has just said, not all organizations are accommodating. not all organisations are welcoming. And then somebody else said, and I'll tee this up with a Madeleine Albright quote. You know what quote I'm going to say? Yeah, there's a special place in hell for women who don't support women.
Yeah.
And former Secretary of State Madeleine Albright said that. And some of the comments in the chat are saying some female-led organisations or female senior management are not supportive of women in menopause. That, people, is a crime.
It is.
Okay? That is a crime. Whether they're not there yet or they sailed through it, that doesn't mean they should not have empathy and have the support. So all of these things, I think as well, there are many great menopause organisations out there for support, you know, to talk it through and give everyone an idea of what they can do in their workplace, especially when they're not amenable. Which leads me on to my next question, which is to do with workplace responsibility. What's one practical thing you believe organisations or leaders should be doing right now to better support women through the menopause? Just one. Fiona.
I think the most important one for our sector, I would think, is education. Although we have mentioned it, I don't think you can do and say enough to equip not just women, but the men in the workplace as well. And not just women of a certain age, but women of all ages. I do think that the workplace needs to be an open arena, if you like, to provide these voices that will come in with expertise to give women the confidence to go and find specialist help when they need it. I think that because we quite often become victims to all of this advertising that says buy this, buy that, try this herb, try the other. I've spent too much money on lotions and potions and pills in order to try to get myself to feel better, because I couldn't feel better while I was having these symptoms. And I think that within the voluntary sector, within the faith sector, we do have challenges around funding, but by the same token, the vast majority of people that are in those sectors working on low wages are women. And women are leading in those organisations as well. And still, even as women, sometimes the reason why we behave as badly as we do is because we're not educated. We're not educated, and we've decided that the way that men have led and what has got us to our place in leadership is the way that we will continue to lead. Not giving women any excuses for doing that. As Michelle said, we need to do something better. We need to challenge the systems that are broken. We need to get rid of them completely and create new systems that are supportive, that are kind, that recognise what it is that we need. So education about what is going on, what you could be going through, how to get help, where to get help, and then having the flexibility within your leadership structure that gives women the time to go and get the help that they need, so that they can return to work stronger and more capable and bring what they have to the table, so they're not disappearing from the workplace. So education, that is key.
Before I go to you, Simone, Hannah has just pointed out, I don't know, it's gone now, so I don't know Hannah what, I missed the number, but Hannah mentioned that her male manager was very accommodating and went to menopause training. He was more accommodating than the female manager, and you find that, and that's like a true advocate, that's a true male ally. And then Jay Casey mentioned that they co-created a menopause policy. That's the thing, you know, sort of taking it into your own hands and putting it together, because if you don't have a HR department or you have HR consultants, then together as a workforce, come together, create that policy and go, listen, we've done the foundation. let's action it and make it part of the handbook, make it part of the induction, and put it through, because there is discussion about it being one of the protected characteristics from the Equalities Act 2010. There is discussion about revising that to include menopause as a protected characteristic, and I think it'll get there at some point. Simone, the one thing in the workplace.
Well, as Fiona said, I think education is key. And as I think it was Hannah, you just said, I think for me, it's not about perfect policies. People think if they put a label on it and do a policy, then that's the answer. I think the co-creation of policies, I think, is that's so simple that irrespective of size of organization, in fact, if you're smaller, co-create something together, I think is really key. And I think we need to move. You asked for one thing, but I think that was going to be impossible with myself and Fiona. But
I know.
It's moving from the well-being to leadership. I think leadership is key in this. You've talked about advocacy and allyship, I think, is key. But if we don't look at this as a leadership opportunity, challenge, if you look at it the long way, then you're looking straight and down retention. If you don't look at this, you don't look at it. It's got to look at this as retention, performance, and culture. So that's why for me it sits as leadership, and education obviously sits right into that. So if we do not support organizations, irrespective of size, and not supporting people at this stage, then they're going to lose that talent. So it's about leading well. It's leading well through this.
Okay, thank you very much. So I've got sector specific questions for each of you, and it's because I've known Simone for 12 years, just before you started the Northern Power Women Awards, which is just awesome. And I've known Fiona, oh my gosh, since I was 5. Look at me lying about my age. Totally lying about me. I've known Fiona 32 years. 32 years. Anyway, what I'm saying is that I've got sector specific, and they're a bit lengthy, so excuse me while I read. Brain fog. So, Fiona, menopause is still a sensitive topic in many workplaces, but in the faith sector, where conversations around the body, aging, and women's health can be more complex, what unique challenges do women face? And you might have covered this already. And how can leaders begin to break that silence in a way that feels culturally and spiritually appropriate?
Right. So I would say that as a leader in the faith community and working within the voluntary sector, quite often I need to be comfortable, and I would challenge other people just to be comfortable with being uncomfortable, because so many of the things that need to be said are going to make people uncomfortable, and they just have to suck it up. They really do. Because I think that for too long, we've not had within the faith sector women at the decision-making table. And I think that is part of the problem, that we've had men making decisions about what we are going to do within a community and what have you. But not having a woman at the table means that when you're designing your strategy or your policy, you're not taking into account the fact that you're expecting the women to do the work. And you haven't actually asked them whether your idea is a good idea and how it's actually going to work in reality on the ground. So within the faith sector, yes, we have challenges with funding. Yes, we have challenging as voluntary-led organisations with using volunteers, and volunteers who we may cover their expenses. We're not giving them a significant amount of money in the way of pay, but the expectation, and to be honest, the quality of what these women give is often far in excess of what you would see in a normal workplace, because they're bringing their expertise that often they've honed in the workplace, and they're giving that for free or for very little money to a local community. So we are doing really well. It's like making bricks without straw. We're in that situation where we're doing the best that we can. But I do think that the challenge of having women at the decision-making table, and not there in a tokenistic way, but actually setting ourselves up as organisations in a way where we are allowing people in the congregation to police the outcomes of what we say we're going to do, because quite often we will talk about these things and it is just an awareness day or an awareness Sunday where we might talk about issues that are impacting our societies. And I think that in our communities, and it's the same in any workplace, it needs to be more than a day. It needs to be more than a month when we talk about these things, woven into the fabric of who we are as a sector and as an organisation. Needs to be an understanding of women's health, whatever age they are. So when they're extending into the third age of life, where I think I do actually fall into that now, where I'm technically speaking, I could be retired, but I am physically in great shape, in better shape than I've been for a long time. And I have mental capacity in a way that I have sat round the table with people who are younger than me, who have obviously been up all night, either with their children, because their children have kept them awake, or some of them, I suspect, some have been playing computer games or watching Netflix. And I've never fallen asleep in a meeting. I am that person who, one of those questions that we may well talk about is how we manage the brain fog. And I've had those situations where my little strategies have enabled me to stay sharp in a meeting, as well as having the portable fan. And I have a spare portable fan in my bag for the woman who didn't bring hers, so that I can get through my meetings and perform to the best of my ability. We're not there to bring down anything that an organisation does. I do think that when you haven't got women at the leadership table and within your organisation bringing everything that they can, organisations are suffering. They're suffering in terms of their performance and their impact on society. Mm-hmm. We're not elderly and frail yet. You know, we're women who are bringing our A game, even though we may be older, and even though we're navigating the difficulty that is sometimes menopause for us.
Thank you. And Claire, you've got a fan in Claire. Claire says it's lovely to hear faith and community being discussed so passionately in a mainstream leadership arena. I totally agree, Claire, because I always find that's why I try and bring people that I know that have got so much to share into this arena. I straddle both arenas, and I just think they should interlock and intertwine. Can I say shout out to the guys? Carlos, thank you for your comments, and the fact that you're father, I think, of 2 or 3 girls, and that's fantastic. And Andy, what you said about, you know, the leaders of the female leaders of tomorrow, yesterday, are not the same as tomorrow. Empowering, enabling, empathetic, and understanding. With the world the way it is at the moment, we have got to lean and push hard against that. Yeah. Simone, I've got your question now. Simone, Armed Forces, that's your background. How long have you been in the Royal Navy?
I was in the Royal Navy first time round for 8 years, and then I have been an honorary captain in the Royal Navy for the past 4 and a bit. So it's given me, if you like, the chance to go and be back on the inside track, be a critical friend, be an advocate. So it's almost like come in a full circle moment.
So let me give you my question. So in the armed forces, where there's often a strong culture of resilience, performance and physical endurance, how does menopause show up for women, and what needs to shift to ensure it's recognised and supported without being seen as a weakness?
Well, I've been with both Army and Navy this week. We've been doing a pre-record of Armed Forces Day, which is not until June, but I think in the climate that we're in now, it was an ideal time to come and sort of role model what is going on in at the grassroots. You've talked about the environments working in the Royal Navy, where performance can be everything. You're expected to be on it 24/7. You're expected to deliver, and there isn't always a space to say, you know, today's a bit harder because. So what happens is it's easy historically just to manage around it and kind of ignore it. And the whole thing around menopause, I think, as I said in my intro, if you were here, when I joined the Navy back in the day, it was before women went to sea, and there were certain, you only signed on for 9 years in those days, whereas now it's a 22-year commission. And you can have family, you can make family work, you can make sort of blended families work, etc. Come back after child responsibilities, and you can, it does work. But back in that day, it was not possible. So it's safe to say that it's because of that, it's taken an awful long time to develop any kind of cultural shift around this. We always equate any kind of movement in the armed forces to being like a tanker, that it will take such a long time to shift. But as long as you're going in the right direction, I'm always a fan of that. But I think the shift is simple across the forces. We need to stop equating resilience with silence. We keep talking about silence today because they're not the same thing. And environments like the armed forces, there's a strong culture of that resilience and performance, which can make it harder to just say, I'm really struggling with this. So we do adapt quietly. Menopause does not reduce your capability, but it can how you change. You show up some days. So the shift is to separate resilience from silence. Supporting people doesn't lower the bar. It helps meet it if you've got that support around it. But one of the things that I've been working around and looked into, so it's only come into play about 18 months ago, but there is now a defence menopause group. And this was because of the need, as we're talking a lot in the groups over here, that there's a need to link women of menopause and perimenopause and postmenopause age to share experience and support, because there's no point in having the bravado of just cracking on and do it. Let's talk about how to deal with it. Let's deal with how difficult it was to deal with at the time. So let's just open and talk about it. And as I said, the reason it's taken so long is because the past women retired through childbirth at the age of approximately 40 after 22-year careers. And so it wasn't seen and visible, whereas now, as sort of careers change and career sort of trajectory changes, it's a different environment now. So for me, it's great. I welcome seeing the Defence Menopause Group, and even in its simplest terms, it's not over-engineered. It's just designed to, if you like, verbalize and talk about what is happening, and if you like, the side hacks is how you get through and work through, because sometimes, there's certain situations you maybe can't necessarily have that fan in your, and in certain situations, I'm not making light of that, because there's certain circumstances and climates you need that. But this talking about it is literally, it's good to talk, where I think historically it's been very much that sort of stiff upper lip and, let's not talk about it, let's just carry on. Whereas actually I'm seeing more of that openness and vulnerability, which takes us back to the leadership piece, Claire, the particularly from the Navy perspective, the first Sea Lord is the first ever Royal Marines, and he's very open to sort of not just doing what the norm and what has always been done, is what does leadership look like on every level, and what can we enable, how can we make it simpler, easier for our people, because without people there is no armed service. So yeah, that's my sort of my experience back in the day. Probably was -0, whereas now it's progress, not perfection.
Yeah, we have got some fantastic, thank you very much, Simone and Fiona. We've got some fantastic comments there. I could pull together a report and investigate lots of things that have been put in the chat, and there's some great best practice as well in work and at home, because you're dropping the nuggets with some of the young people as they're asking questions, or they're curious, or they're trying to understand the way you are. That's also vitally important. We are close to the end, I'm afraid, and I know we've got some questions, and one of them was, I'm going to take one of the preset questions from the audiences that registered, and one of them was, any examples of companies with age-inclusive policies at work? I'll take this one. What I know of Co-op, and I know Co-op has a menopause policy. They've had that pre-pandemic with peer support groups and manager guidance. I also know ASOS, Channel 4 and Monza They have a broader reproductive health policy that pulls in fertility, pregnancy loss, and menopause. So, you know, not just in isolation, and that's really good that they have got that as well, and signals a whole life inclusive approach. I like that, a whole life inclusive approach. And Tesco as well. Tesco is one of sort of the mainstream ones that have menopause awareness embedded into product strategy and culture. For you, Simone, and I'm going to Simone for Fiona only because I know Simone works with a lot of corporates that support with the umbrella We Are Power brand and with Northern Power Women. You know, when you've got 800 people in a room and you've got all those different corporates in a room, like we were on the 12th of March, you've got some perspective on this, Simone.
Yeah, and I think the underline of all of the organisations we work with over the last, you know, sort of period of a decade, the key thing really is that a good policy is only useful if people feel comfortable enough to use it, and that has absolutely jumped out in the chat today. If it's just a piece of paper on a shelf, or on a book, or on an email, or on an intranet, people don't feel like they can use it, then it's absolutely a waste of the time it takes to do it. You've mentioned some of the key organisations, you know, so Channel 4. We know Tesco have sort of been doing this for such a long time. HSB have been doing it globally. The awareness bit, the key words, if you were to do a word cloud across the likes of Manchester Airport, Royal London, Barclays, Bank of America, some of those big organisations and smaller organisations as well, it's about advocacy, it's about awareness, and it's about flexibility. But it has to be open. I saw somebody in the chat say, we've got this and we've got a women's group and we've got this, but actually it's not really working. But if it's not there to be used, if it's just there as to look pretty, then it's worth the fingers that we've typed with. So for us, it's really making it live. It's making it every day. And that has been the biggest success for us, is working with organisations to make these things every day. And that fits across so much of the remit. Advocacy is key to this. Being curious, having conversations. And I think you can have a conversation about, we talk about advocacy a lot, don't we, Caroline? You know, you can talk about advocacy, you can talk about menopause, you can talk about confidence. It doesn't have to be one set conversation on menopause. You can have wider, broader. So don't just think, I'm going to this and I feel uncomfortable about just going to a menopause clinic or whatever. Wider conversations, curiosity, education, Fiona's talked about, leadership. It comes across all of the spectrum. So I think it is that you talked about Co-op, great organisation. Like, it's embedding it. It's embedding it within the DNA. It's good to talk, right?
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Thank you. I'm going to wrap round. I've also realised that the dog's pulled the plug out of my laptop, so I might disappear any minute. Just traipsing around my feet. I've been very calm about it. Thank you so much, Simone and Fiona. I want to bring you back for more. Everyone that has signed up from the UK and far afield, I see you. I see you. Thank you so much. Don't disappear at the moment, because I've got a closing remark, and I also want to hand back to the fabulous Mary from the CMI team. Thank you, CMI team, the tech team behind the scenes. So, if there's one thing to have, for you to have and to leave with today, it's this: menopause isn't a decline in leadership. It's often where it deepens. At the very point women reach peak experience and perspective, too many are stepping back, stepping down, and stepping out. Not due to lack of capability, but lack of support. And that matters because evidence is clear. Organisations with more women in leadership are more profitable, make better decisions, and outperform their peers. I keep saying this, data is queen. So this isn't just a well-being issue, it's a business critical issue. The real opportunity here is not just supporting women through menopause, but recognising what often emerges on the other side. It's greater clarity, stronger boundaries, and more authentic leadership. So the question is no longer how do we manage menopause at work? It's, are we ready to value the women rising through it. Because when we do, we don't just retain talent, we elevate leadership. My name's Caroline Whitehead. Thank you all for watching and listening and contributing to the conversation. We're still going to continue this. You mark my words. I'm handing over to Mary B. Where are you?
I'm here. So that's it for today's session. Thank you to Caroline, Simone, and Fiona for your insight and expertise. Please stay tuned to hear more about CMI membership, and thank you for joining us.
Don't forget, as a CMI member, you can find the latest management and leadership insights at managers.org.uk. If you're not yet a member, join our community to discover CMI Confidence with on-demand resources, our network of mentors, and industry-leading accreditations.